Learning to drive in the UK right now is horrendous, and it's horrendous for one reason, because of the driving test backlog. This is the backlog that's been in place since COVID. It hasn't got better, it's only got worse. Everyone's stressed, from learners to parents to instructors to examiners. And it's because you can't get tests for months, if you can get tests at all. The real problem here is you know that if you fail a driving test, even over a silly mistake, you can't get another retest for ages, if at all, which puts more pressure on you to pass first time. In this video, I'm going to take you through why there's a backlog, what this means for you as a learner, what the DVSA are doing about it, how to actually find a driving test in the first place, and how to prepare yourself if the worst comes to worst and you fail. Let's get into it. First, let's go through why there's a backlog in the first place. So during COVID, the driving test system got shut down for over a year. And then when it got restarted again, the DVSA weren't up to full strength. They were working on skeleton staff. So in any one test center, there wasn't a full batch of examiners doing 6 to 8 driving tests a day like they normally do. There were half the staff or less at each driving test center, catering to every single person who just turned 17, of which there are, I think, 5 million every single year. All of them need driving tests. That demand doesn't go away, but the backlog stacks up and gets worse and worse and worse every single day that the DVSA have closed driving test centres or are running on a skeleton staff. But the backlog's getting worse. How's it getting worse if we're back up to full speed? Well, because the people who are driving examiners are most likely to be in the demographic that are most affected by the virus, a lot of them actually just left the job because they were too worried to carry on. So not only did the DVSA lose a lot of examiners over the COVID period, also since COVID, a lot are still leaving, and that's down to one thing, the pay. DVSA staff are civil servants, the same as teachers, ambulances, firemen, police, and they've all been on a public sector pay freeze for the last umpteen years. So their wages have not caught up or been anywhere near in line with inflation. Being an examiner used to actually be the exit strategy for a lot of driving instructors, where you do so many years in the job and then when you get close to retirement, you switch over and be an examiner because of the cushy public sector pension. But it's not realistic anymore because they just don't get paid enough to make it worth it. So what that means is not only are the DVSA not recruiting the same numbers of examiners that they used to, the examiners that they've got, they can't retain them. Do you notice that all examiners have body cams on now? That's not by accident, and it's not as a joke. The DVSA didn't invest in cameras just for bants. They actually have a really hard job that people don't respect enough, and they definitely don't get paid enough to do it. So the problem isn't at all that we've got more people failing driving tests. The problem isn't that the standard of driving's dropping. The problem is that all of the people who didn't get tested in COVID, we haven't got through that backlog yet. And at the very point that we needed more examiners to help us get through that backlog, we've actually got less, and the number is still dropping. The DVSA have recently released an update on what exactly they're doing about it, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but I think that the effort is laughable. I'll get onto that in a second, but first let's talk about what this means for you. Firstly, the main thing it means is you're going to have longer waiting times for a driving test. I remember as an instructor, we used to sit in the waiting rooms of the driving test when our students had gone out on test, and we used to say stuff like, oh, isn't it a joke? There's a 3-4 week wait for a driving test. What's the point in the 10-day waiting time? We would kill to go back to those times right now. What you'll find if you haven't tried already is when you go on to book a driving test on the DVSA website, you'll find that there's nothing available, and it will say no tests available at your closest centre, no tests available at the second closest centre, same story at the third and fourth. You get the picture. What that means when it says that is not that there's no tests available, but the government only releases tests 24 weeks, 6 months in advance. So if every single one of those driving tests are booked up by somebody else, they're assigned to someone else's driving license number, then the system will just show no tests available. It's not that there's no tests for a year, 2 years, 3 years, because the dates are only released 24 weeks beforehand. I'll get onto exactly what to do to book a driving test and the things you can try later, but it's not the exact same story all over the UK though. Some places are worse than others. Some places you might find driving tests in 6 months, a couple of dates. In some places you might find no driving tests, and it's really difficult to find cancellations. But I'll get onto exactly what to do if you're trying to book a driving test, my best hints and tips later on in the video. I do think it's really important to think about what this actually means for you in advance though, because when you think about it, if you know that you can't get another driving test in 6 months or even longer after you fail your first driving test. Coming to terms with that early and having a strategy to deal with that is really important, because if you fail, that's going to put more pressure on you to pass first time. Another thing that you might want to be prepared for is that your learning journey might cost a little bit more money. So you might have budgeted for X amount of lessons, but if you fail and you can't get another driving test for 6 months, you will need to keep your skills up. You will need to pay for more driving lessons, and you will need to pay for another driving test. I would strongly advise don't use resellers. But first, before I tell you what you can do about it to help yourself get a driving test and protect yourself if you fail, let me let you know what the DVSA are doing about it to help you find more driving tests on the system to help us get through the backlog. This is an update, it's official, and it's from the DVSA. I'm going to put this email on the screen at the same time as me reading it so that you can see from the horse's mouth exactly what's going on as well. Obviously, I'll also give you my thoughts alongside it. So the DVSA said that we know one of the reasons waiting times are high is because more people want driving tests than ever before. We know this. This isn't new information. More people want driving tests than ever before because you closed down driving tests for over a year. And recruiting and training more driving examiners is actually one of the ways that they're looking to reduce this backlog. Great. So the updated stats on recruitment are, since July 2024, that's over a year ago, we've recruited and trained 271 examiners who are now in post and delivering driving tests. There's over 360 driving test centres in the UK. So in a year and 3 months, they haven't even put one new examiner into each driving test centre. And that stat doesn't take into account all of the examiners that have left. If I had those numbers, I'm sure they'd be much higher than the amount of driving examiners that they've managed to recruit, retain, and put into post. To be fair to the DVSA, they did actually say in this paragraph, we are seeing more existing driving examiners leave the agency. If we can retain some of these examiners while bringing new ones in, there's a much greater chance of making additional tests available for your pupils to book. They've basically said exactly what I said in black and white there. There's more examiners leaving than are joining, so the system and the problem is only getting worse. Some of the problems that they said ranged from driving instructors bringing up substandard pupils, all the way through to you guys, you pupils, not turning up ready enough for your driving tests. This is the first time in one of their updates that they've publicly said the problem isn't with instructors, it's not with you guys, the learners, the problem is with the examiners. And it's not the individual examiner's fault. They work really hard, really hard. It's with the fact that they don't get paid enough, and the level of pay that they get now no longer reflects the job that they do. Personally, I think it's a huge step forward that they've actually managed to narrow down and nail down the issue here. But what we can take from this information is that the problem A, isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and B, they haven't got the resources, the skills, or the knowledge.
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
They just don't have what it takes to fix it. So let's talk about how to actually find a driving test, because if they're not going to fix it, we have to protect ourselves by being able to still book driving tests, because we all still need driving licenses. There's 2 things I would advise you do. Number 1 is the 6 a.m. trick, I'll explain it. Number 2 is the refresh trick, I'll explain that too. Let's start with the 6 a.m. trick. A lot of people say this, if you wake up at 6 a.m. and log on to the test booking website, you'll find driving tests. To keep it at 24 weeks ahead, every single Monday, they release another whole week of driving tests, but that's for in 6 months' time, which doesn't really help you very much if you've just recently failed, because you don't want a driving test in 6 months. You literally want a driving test in 6 minutes. So if it's your first driving test or you're halfway through your learning journey, somewhere near to the beginning, I would advise you to go on Monday morning at 6 a.m. and try and book a driving test, because then at least you've got one banked, you can work towards it. If it's getting closer to your driving test and you don't feel quite ready, hopefully you can book in extra lessons so that you are ready by that date. But this doesn't help you at all if you've recently failed your driving test, because waiting 6 months just feels like it's way too long, and I'd agree with you. The next thing to try is the refresh trick, and what this basically means is sitting on the website for hours and hours and hours, refreshing constantly until a cancellation comes up. And when I say constantly, I mean you have to be constantly refreshing. The problem is the backlog's so huge now that at any one time there's thousands of people searching for driving tests in your area. If you're not there to click that refresh button as soon as the cancellation pops up, there'll be, I guarantee, someone else there ready to click it before you. Anyone that's been on the DVSA website and tried to book a driving test will be able to tell you they've seen a driving test come up, they've clicked it, and it's disappeared. That instantly, that just shows you how many people are gunning for the same driving tests. You have to be quick and you have to be there when the cancellation pops up. If you're not, and you only click once and you say, well, Bromley's not got any driving tests. Right now they don't, but in literally 5 more seconds, there could be a cancellation pop up, and then in another 3.5 seconds, that test will be gone, I guarantee. Okay, wait, stop. Before, I know that there's people formulating their comment reply to what I've just said right now. And I know the DVSA's got some strict rules on their website, really strict, and if you refresh too many times, then you get kicked off. It just says access denied. I can't remember how many exact clicks. I did try it once to see how many it was. It's not many. You get about 20 refreshes until the system will kick you off. Firstly, though, I will say the system will only kick you off for 1 hour from the time of your first click. So go off and do something else, come back, and the system will be open to you again. But the other thing that you can do is if you use a VPN, I know it comes up sometimes, you're using a VPN, but if you use a VPN located in England or the UK, sometimes, not always, sometimes it allows me on the system. If you know a better way around the refresh block, let me know in the comments, but that works for me. There's about 6 or 7 different servers in the UK. I could just switch between all the different servers, and by the time I've got to the last one, I can then reuse the first one again and keep checking for driving tests forever. Okay, those are the 2 best tips that I've got for you if you need to book a driving test. And I will also end this section, before I tell you what to do, if the worst comes to the worst and you fail, by saying stop using resellers. I don't care how legit they are, I don't care if your mates used them before and had success, or your driving instructors recommended them. The problem with resellers is you don't know if you're going to buy a real driving test or if you're going to get scammed. And there's far too many people messaging me daily saying that they've been scammed by a reseller. Sometimes the resellers use my face on their Instagram. Sometimes the resellers use Aman from Clearview or reputable people who you know. The Instagrams look so real, the TikTok accounts look so real, I know. But they're not. You'll pay the money and you'll get absolutely nothing in return. The only thing that you get is ghosted. Stop using resellers. To lose £300 to maybe get a driving test a little bit earlier, I promise it's not worth it in the slightest. I will also say I recently did a video about how to book a driving test in 2025. I break down every single method and tell you their pros and cons and whether you should use them or avoid them. If you want to watch that video and you're trying to book a driving test and you just need a couple more hints and tips, I'll leave that linked at the end of this video. So click that one next. But while we're staring at this beautiful Lamborghini Urus, let's next talk about what to do if you fail and how to set your mind up before your driving test so that if the worst comes to the worst, you're not super affected by it. I'm also going to share a personal story of something that happened to me on a driving test, and it was devastating. The best thing to do before you go for your driving test is have a plan B. Have a strategy worked out already so that you know what you're going to do if the worst comes to the worst. I call it a plan B, and I get everybody I teach to have a plan B. I don't care how good a driver you are. I don't care how much experience and practice you've put in, or how much you need it, or how much the stars are aligning and the universe is telling you that you're going to pass. Anybody can fail a driving test, including me. I took a motorbike driving test recently, last week in fact, and I turned up for the driving test. The examiner was lovely. It was in Mitcham. And I set off on my driving test, riding test they call it, and at first 5 minutes I was super nervous. You wouldn't think so, because obviously my road knowledge is, well, it should be pretty good, and I'm actually really good at riding. You're going to be like, well, you failed a driving test, but wait, let me get to that bit. So the first 5 minutes nerve-wracking, then you realise I'm driving, I'm doing this. I'm getting into it, I'm alive, I can drive. And the examiner's talking to me. They have a bank of icebreaker questions, so while you're going around your driving test, they'll ask you things. They'll show interest in you. When you're coming up to the end of your driving test, you're going to realise you're coming up to the end of your driving test, and then your mind's going to start to wander. This is the advice I've given out 100 times or more. Don't let your mind wander, because when your mind wanders, that's when you start making mistakes. As I was coming up to the end of my driving test, I know Mitcham really well. I've done loads of driving tests there. So I know the routes, I know the area impeccably well. I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm coming up to the end of my driving test. And I totted up in my head the amount of minors I could possibly have got, and in my head I said 3. The maximum minors that I got, like if he's going to be a really harsh examiner, he could only have given me 3 minors so far. So I was like, I'm bloody passing this, oh my God. And then I said to myself, get a grip, because I haven't finished yet. It's finished when I turn my bike off. So then I got a grip on myself and I started riding, I'm concentrating. And then he said to me in my ear, take the next left into the test center. And in my helmet, I was doing a little happy dance. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Boy's just got himself a motorbike license. At the same time, I was doing a happy dance, thinking about all the things I was going to do after I'd passed, and the fact that I'd literally just passed the riding test. I looked to my right, and on my right, there was a pedestrian. This pedestrian was coming up to a zebra crossing. I completely missed the zebra crossing. Honestly, I completely missed the zebra crossing. Supposed to be a driving instructor. And this pedestrian was coming up to the zebra crossing. I'm crossing the zebra crossing as I'm looking right at this pedestrian. I don't know where I was looking. I don't know where my brain was at the time, but I had completely lost focus because it was the end of my driving test. And the same piece of advice that I've given out 100 times, I didn't follow myself. To rub it in and make things worse, what he said to me next hurt like hell. He said, that test was flawless. I would have given you no minors at all until that zebra crossing. If you've got a plan B, it takes the sting out of it. It also takes the pressure off so that before you even go and step foot in a DVSA waiting room, you feel more relaxed, you don't feel so much pressure, and then actually, inadvertently, you're more likely to pass. And your plan B can look like anything from, I don't even need a driving license so much right now. If I have to wait 6 months, I have to wait 6 months. I'll get it again eventually. Your plan B can be, I've got a mate who lives in Worcester. Worcester doesn't have to wait as long as London for a driving test. I'm gonna go up and stay with them for the week, book my driving test there, learn the routes around Worcester with my mate and his car, and then take the driving test there instead. Your plan B can be anything. It can be a great plan B, it can be a long-term plan B. Just knowing that you're not under so much pressure and this isn't your last chance ever to pass works wonders. The next thing I'll say is keep practicing. If you've just taken your driving test, it's likely that staying with your instructor will not really teach you very much. You'll be building up experience, but the best thing to do would be to find a family member or friend with a car so that you can jump in the driving seat, they can sit in the passenger seat, and you can get yourself insured on it and just keep building that experience and not lose the skill. If you don't have anyone like that in your circle, then the next best thing to do would be to find a car that you're gonna buy. If you're gonna buy a car after you pass your driving test, hey, why not just buy a car before you pass your driving test? You're gonna spend the same money, but you can keep yourself current in that car. You could also then actually take that car to your driving test so that you'd save on instructor fees too. But staying sharp and staying current with your driving skills and even increasing your experience level means that A, you're more likely to pass next time, and B, you're not going to fail because you've forgotten how to drive and you're rusty because you only took one more lesson before your driving test, which was in 6 months' time. And if you don't at all have anyone you can practice with and there's no way that you can buy your own car, then just keep taking lessons. I know that's expensive. I know that that's annoying. I know you've had to pay for another driving test and you probably paid thousands of pounds for lessons already. But if you failed the next one just because your skill level had dipped, you'd kick yourself because now you actually have to spend more money on another test and more lessons. Okay, let's wrap this up. I hope that you've learned something. The backlog isn't going away overnight, and the learners who stay flexible have the best chance of passing. The learners who are prepared have the best chance of passing. Let me know in the comments how long you've been waiting for a driving test, what driving test number are you on, and how did you find your driving test? Also, if you've got any hints or tips for everybody else to try and find a driving test, we'll all be really appreciative of it. I've heard something about a Chrome extension going around. If you've got the knowledge on that, drop it in my comment section. Listen, it's not all doom and gloom. Once you pass your driving test, all of this will be a funny story. I guarantee. It's stressful now, but having a license is so worth it. This is the video about how to book a driving test. All of the methods, I tell you what they are and whether they're good, not, or worth it. Plus, actually, if you look through the comment section of this video, it's got a lot. Other people are giving you their advice as well. So I'd highly recommend this as your next watch. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, peace, bye.